Well, grace and peace to you, brothers and sisters. We hope that you're having a blessed week. I'm out here in my backyard waiting for the thunder to come, waiting for the thunderbirds to fly over, looking forward to that strange source of encouragement, but I think it will be encouraging to see those planes fly over. And tonight I want to offer up a word of encouragement, and we're going to take a break from the parable series. We'll pick back up on that series next week. But tonight I want to talk about the power of symbols and the power of the memorials of our faith. And as a way into this, I want to share with you some lyrics of a familiar hymn for most of us, a hymn that really got me into some trouble when I was a kid. So think back to your childhood, and maybe if you grew up going to church, you could relate to this. But for me, I had a certain friend that I knew if I sat by this person, I was going to get in trouble. And maybe you had a friend like that, or maybe you were that friend that caused someone else to get into trouble. Well, I had such a friend. And I remember sitting on a pew in Stockdale, Texas, and really I was like a ticking time bomb when it came to laughter. And this particular friend, he could just look at me a certain way, and I would go into hysterics. He's just one of those people. And then we sing the lyrics. Here I raise my Ebenezer, from this beloved hymn, Come Thou Fount of Every Blessing. And to this day, I don't know why that line is so funny. We had no idea what it meant. It was a funny name. It made no sense. But of course, it was the way that my friend sang this particular song. He sang it with special emphasis and propriety on the word Ebenezer, and it would leave not just me, but everyone sitting near him in stitches. And the rest of the service was the big challenge to try to control my laughter with my parents sitting a few pews behind me. Well, I don't know what your experience with that song is. I hope you carry with you a higher level of maturity than I did and my friends did. But through the years, as I've heard the story behind the Ebenezer Stone, and through certain life experiences, I've come to not only love that particular lyric and that particular name, but the name Ebenezer has actually shaped some of my practices as a believer. So, do you have an Ebenezer Stone? Well, before we get into that question, let's talk a little bit about the story of the Ebenezer Stone from 1 Samuel chapter 7, the story that finds the people in an absolute train wreck. 1 Samuel comes on the tail end of the book of Judges, which I think is really a picture of fallen humanity. This is what it looks like, and it's played out in the people of Israel. And if you recall, the book of Judges ends with this line. In those days, there was no king in Israel. Everyone did what was right in his own eyes. Can you imagine a world like that? I think we have a pretty good picture of it today. But that truly encapsulates everything that Israel was about in that point in their history. Following Judges, there is the short book, beautiful book of Ruth. But then we get to 1 Samuel, and it picks up right where Judges leaves off. The people are a mess. The spiritual leader of Israel, Eli, has two sons who are corrupt to the core. Israel's neighbors continue to wreak havoc on the people, especially the Philistines, who at this point in their history had become their chief nemesis. And at the beginning of 1 Samuel, there's this battle that takes place. And in this battle, Eli's sons die, as was prophesied. And the Ark of the Covenant, the symbol of God's presence, and even more than a symbol, the Ark of the Covenant was actually the hot spot, the meeting place between heaven and earth. Well, the Philistines capture the Ark. And Eli, upon hearing this news, falls backwards and he dies. A terrible moment in the life of Israel. But not all is bad at the beginning of 1 Samuel. As all this is happening, God is raising up a prophet, priest, and judge named Samuel. Yes, the son of Hannah, the woman who was barren. God gave her the gift of a son. And then Hannah returns that gift back to God in service to him. And Samuel's first big test is to go out to the people and turn them away from their idols And then he rallies them together to go into battle the Philistine. And so that's what he does. He calls on the people to flee their idols, and the people listen. And they do rally together behind Samuel, and they go and they defeat the Philistines. And after this defeat, 1 Samuel chapter 7, verse 12 says this: Then Samuel took a stone and set it up between Mizpah and Shin, and called its name Ebenezer. For he said, Till now, the Lord has helped us. The Ebenezer Stone, the physical reminder of God's help. So, can you identify the Ebenezer stones in your life? Well, yesterday, my wife and I had the privilege of visiting one of our Ebenezer stones. Julie had a checkup at Baylor Scott & White in Temple, Texas, to go see her neurosurgeon. And as some of you know who are familiar with that hospital in Temple, on the north end of the North Tower, there is what's called the Meditation Garden. And the month that Julie was there in Temple, we would spend time in that garden, just getting some fresh air whenever it wasn't too cold outside, but also to lift up prayer, our small and feeble prayers that we could muster. But during that time of disorientation, that garden became a place of peace. And now we're a few months removed from that, and that garden has become a physical symbol of God's provision, of God's presence, of God's deliverance. And now every time we go back to that hospital, and I don't know, maybe every time we drive through Temple, we plan to stop at that garden and remember, till now the Lord has helped us. Or to put it another way, here we raise our Ebenezer Stone. Hither by thy help we have come. So what are your Ebenezer rocks? It could be a place. It could be an object. It could be a conversation. But as a spiritual exercise on this Wednesday evening, I want to encourage you and your family, or if you're by yourself, to pick up the phone and call someone and talk about your Ebenezer stones. What are those moments when you recognize in very tangible ways God's help and God's presence? And do you have a symbol that connects that moment to your memories? Well, this isn't a contest, but can you come up with 5 different Ebenezer stones? Well, why don't you take some time to do so? Call it an exercise in counting your blessings. But of course, we know in Christ, those blessings are too innumerable to count. Let's consider such things not only tonight, but the rest of this week. Go in the grace of God. May God be with you all.